When Elizabeth Taylor walked out of Michael Jackson's 1982 concert at Madison Square Garden, she had no idea that one phone call would begin the most unlikely friendship in Hollywood history. What happened next wasn't just about two superstars bonding, it was about survival, protection, and a love so pure that it would save the king of pop from his darkest moments. The stadium was electric that November night in 1982. Michael Jackson was at the peak of his Thriller era, fresh off the album's release just 2 months earlier. Every seat in Madison Square Garden was filled with 20,000 screaming fans, celebrities, and industry executives who had come to witness what many were calling the performance of a lifetime. The energy was so intense that the building itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Diana Ross was there, beaming with pride at her protege's success. Quincy Jones sat in the producer's section, nodding approvingly at every perfectly executed note. Music critics, who had initially dismissed Michael as just another child star, were frantically scribbling notes, realizing they were witnessing the birth of a legend. But when the legendary Elizabeth Taylor, seated in the premium VIP section just 20 feet from the stage, quietly slipped out during the opening bars of Billie Jean, nobody noticed, except Michael himself. From the stage, Michael's trained performer's eyes that had been scanning audiences since he was 5 years old, caught everything. The flash of diamonds and purple silk moving toward the exit, the way security guards respectfully parted for the violet-eyed legend. The empty seat where Hollywood royalty had been sitting moments before, his heart sank like a stone. Elizabeth Taylor, the woman he'd admired since childhood, the goddess of Hollywood who had conquered the silver screen and survived 8 marriages, was leaving his show. The woman who had won Academy Awards, who had been married to Richard Burton twice, who represented everything glamorous about old Hollywood. She was walking out on him. Mid-spin, during his signature moonwalk that usually drew the loudest screams, his perfect choreography faltered for just a fraction of a second. The thousands of screaming fans didn't notice, but his backup dancers did. So did his sound engineers watching from the wings. Michael Jackson never missed a beat, never showed weakness on stage. But in that moment, devastating questions flooded his mind. Was his performance not good enough? Had he disappointed his idol? Was the woman who had survived scandals and triumphs somehow unimpressed by his artistry? The rest of the concert became a blur of muscle memory and professional autopilot. Michael hit every note with technical precision, executed every dance move flawlessly, smiled and waved to the adoring crowd who had no idea their hero was crumbling inside. But internally, a voice kept whispering the words that would haunt him until dawn. Elizabeth Taylor walked out on you. But what Michael didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have understood, was that Elizabeth wasn't leaving because she was bored or unimpressed. At 50 years old, the screen legend was quietly battling severe vision problems, a consequence of decades under harsh movie studio lights and multiple eye surgeries from various accidents on film sets. The flashing stage lights that made Michael's performance so visually spectacular had become physically painful for her. The smoke effects and strobing colors that enhanced the magic of his show were causing her genuine distress. Her departure wasn't a judgment of his talent. It was a necessary retreat to preserve what remained of her deteriorating eyesight. But Elizabeth Taylor didn't just leave and forget about the evening. As her limousine pulled away from Madison Square Garden, she was already planning how to reach out to the young performer whose talent had moved her to tears before the lighting became unbearable. The next morning, Michael sat alone in his Encino family home, still wearing yesterday's performance clothes, staring at a piece of paper with Elizabeth Taylor's publicist's phone number. His brothers had returned to their own homes. His mother, Catherine, was in the kitchen making breakfast, humming softly, unaware of her son's internal turmoil. The house felt unusually quiet after the thunderous applause of the night before. Michael's hands trembled as he reached for the phone, dialing the number with the same nervous energy he'd felt before his first solo performance. After 3 rings that felt like an eternity, a voice answered, but not the publicist he expected. "Hello?" The voice was unmistakably Elizabeth Taylor herself, with that distinctive cadence that had commanded movie screens for decades. "Miss Taylor, this is Michael Jackson," his voice barely above a whisper, carrying the same shy uncertainty he'd had as a child talking to adults in the music industry. There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. Then Elizabeth's warm, genuine laugh filled the receiver. Not the practiced laugh of a movie star, but something real and spontaneous. "Oh, Michael, I was hoping you'd call. I've been sitting by this phone since 7 this morning, hoping you would reach out." "You were?" Michael's voice carried a mix of surprise and relief. "Darling, I've been feeling absolutely terrible about last night. I know how performers notice everything. Every face in the audience, every person who leaves. I was worried sick that you might have seen me go and wondered why." Michael felt tears beginning to form. In all his years of performing, no one had ever understood this particular vulnerability. "I did see you leave. I thought, I thought maybe I disappointed you. I thought my performance wasn't worthy of Elizabeth Taylor." What Elizabeth said next would change both their lives forever, setting in motion a friendship that would span decades and redefine what loyalty meant in Hollywood. "Michael, sweetheart, you didn't disappoint me. You absolutely enchanted me. I've seen every major performer of the last 4 decades. Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, the Beatles at Shea Stadium. But what you did on that stage last night wasn't just entertainment. It was pure artistry, poetry in motion. You moved me to tears before I even had to leave." She paused, and Michael could hear her taking a breath before continuing. "But my eyes, darling, they're not what they used to be. Too many years under hot studio lights, too many surgeries after accidents on movie sets. The flashing lights and smoke were making my head pound. I had to leave to protect what vision I have left, but my heart and soul stayed in that theater with you." That phone call lasted 3 hours and 47 minutes. 3 hours and 47 minutes that bridged 2 generations, 2 completely different worlds, and 2 souls who had never experienced what most people would consider a normal childhood. They talked about everything and nothing. Michael told her about growing up in Gary, Indiana, about the pressure of performing since age 5, about how he sometimes felt like he was still that little boy from the Jackson 5 trying to please everyone. Elizabeth shared stories from her own journey, being discovered at age 12, the impossible standards of old Hollywood, the way fame had stolen normal teenage experiences she could never reclaim. Michael found himself opening up in ways he never had before, not even to family members. There was something about Elizabeth's voice, her understanding, that made him feel safe to be vulnerable. "You know," Elizabeth said during that marathon conversation, "neither one of us had a real childhood, did we?" Michael was quiet for a long moment. Nobody had ever understood that before. "No," he whispered, "we didn't. Then we understand each other in ways other people never could." From that moment, an extraordinary friendship was born. But this wasn't just any Hollywood friendship. This was a bond forged by shared trauma, protected by fierce loyalty, and tested by the cruelest rumors the entertainment world could conjure. Within weeks of that transformative phone call, Elizabeth became a regular fixture at Michael's Encino home. She'd arrive in her distinctive Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow, always perfectly dressed despite the casual nature of their visits, always bringing carefully chosen gifts that revealed how intently she'd been listening to their conversations. She brought rare books about dance history and musical theory, vintage Hollywood memorabilia from her personal collection, photographs of legendary performers, original sheet music, costume pieces from classic films. But most importantly, she brought stories that no one else could tell. Stories of surviving child stardom when there were no laws protecting young performers. Tales of navigating fame's treacherous waters when one scandal could end a career forever. Wisdom about finding authentic love and genuine relationships in a world built entirely on pretense, manipulation, and mutual benefit. Michael was completely enchanted by these visits. Here was Elizabeth Taylor, the woman who had been married to Richard Burton twice, who had conquered Hollywood when it was still controlled by powerful studio moguls, who had fought publicly for AIDS awareness when such advocacy was considered career suicide. And she was treating him not like the untouchable king of pop, but like the curious, seeking young man he truly was inside. Their friendship deepened with each visit. Elizabeth would arrive in the late afternoon, and they'd spend hours walking through Michael's elaborate gardens, discussing art, music, literature, and life's deeper meanings. She introduced him to classical poetry, helped him understand the historical context of different musical movements, and shared insights about maintaining artistic integrity in an industry that often prioritized profit over creativity. "You remind me of myself at your age," Elizabeth told him one golden California afternoon as they sat by his pool, watching his exotic birds move through the trees. "You have talent beyond measure, gifts that most people can only dream of possessing, but you're also carrying emotional burdens that no young person should ever have to bear alone." Michael confided in her about things he'd never told anyone: the pressure from his father Joe, the loneliness of fame, the desperate need to be perfect. Elizabeth listened with the wisdom of someone who had survived it all. "The trick, darling," she said, "is to never let them make you cynical. Never let them steal your capacity to love." But Elizabeth saw something in Michael that worried her deeply. Beneath the soft-spoken exterior, she recognized the signs of someone spiraling toward danger. She'd been there herself. In 1983, Michael made a decision that shocked everyone. He invited Elizabeth to move into a guest house at his new Neverland ranch. What the media didn't know was that this wasn't just about friendship. Elizabeth had become Michael's unofficial protector, the one person who could see through his carefully constructed facade. At Neverland, Elizabeth witnessed the real Michael Jackson. She saw him feeding animals at dawn, choreographing alone in his dance studio until his feet bled, and writing music that poured his heart onto paper. She also saw the prescription pill bottles multiplying in his bathroom cabinet. "Michael," she said one evening as they sat by the ranch's lake, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." Michael looked at her with those deep, vulnerable eyes. "Anything, Elizabeth." "How many pills did you take today?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Michael could have lied, should have lied, but this was Elizabeth Taylor, the woman who had battled her own demons and emerged victorious. "I don't remember," he whispered. That night, Elizabeth made a decision that would save Michael Jackson's life. The years between 1984 and 1993 brought unprecedented success and dangerous pressure. Thriller became the best-selling album in history. Michael's concerts sold out worldwide, but with each achievement came higher stakes and more scrutiny. Elizabeth watched with growing concern as Michael's world became increasingly artificial. Everyone around him had financial reasons to keep him working. She was the only person in his life who benefited nothing from his fame except his friendship. "They're going to destroy you if you're not careful," she warned him during one of their dinners at Neverland. "I've seen it happen to too many talented people." Then came 1993, the year that changed everything. The date was June 13th, 1993. Michael was in the middle of his Dangerous World tour when the allegations surfaced. The prescription medications had become his coping mechanism for psychological torture. Everything was crushing him: legal pressure, media scrutiny, betrayal by trusted people. The call came to Elizabeth's home at 3 a.m. "Elizabeth?" Michael's voice was barely recognizable, slurred and broken. I don't think I can do this anymore." Elizabeth didn't hesitate. Within 2 hours, she was on a private jet to Mexico City, where Michael was supposed to perform. What she found when she arrived would haunt her forever. Michael Jackson, the man who could command audiences of 100,000 people, was curled up on his bathroom floor, empty pill bottles scattered around him like fallen soldiers. "Oh, my sweet boy," Elizabeth whispered, kneeling beside him. "What have they done to you?" The next 72 hours were a blur of private doctors, hushed phone calls, and careful maneuvering. Elizabeth knew that if word got out, it would destroy him, so she took control. "Cancel the rest of the tour," she told Michael's shocked managers. "I don't care what it costs. This boy is going to get help, or he's going to die." Elizabeth personally drove Michael to a private rehabilitation facility outside London. As they sat in the car outside the clinic, Michael began to cry. "Everyone's going to know," he sobbed. "Everyone's going to see how weak I am." Elizabeth took his face in her hands, the same hands that had held Academy Awards, that had comforted dying AIDS patients when the world was too afraid to touch them. "Michael Jackson," she said firmly, "getting help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. I should know. I've done it myself." "You have?" "Darling, I've been to rehab more times than I've been married. And that's saying something." Despite everything, Michael laughed. Michael spent 6 weeks in that facility, Every day, Elizabeth called. Every week she visited. When other celebrities distanced themselves from the scandal, Elizabeth held a press conference. I believe Michael Jackson is innocent, she declared, her violet eyes blazing. I have known this man for over a decade. I have seen his heart, his character, and I will continue to believe in him until the day I die. The media attacked her for it. They called her naive, manipulated. Elizabeth didn't care. That boy has been more loyal to me than most of my husbands, she told a reporter. He's never asked me for anything except friendship. And friendship means standing by someone when the whole world is against them. When Michael emerged from rehab, Elizabeth was waiting. They returned to Neverland and spent weeks in quiet recovery together. You saved my life, Michael told her one evening as they watched the sunset. No, darling, Elizabeth replied. We saved each other. The friendship deepened over the years. Elizabeth attended Michael's concerts, defended him through controversies, and became a surrogate grandmother to his children. She taught Prince, Paris, and Blanket about Hollywood history, resilience, and authentic relationships. In 2001, during Elizabeth's 69th birthday celebration, Michael surprised her with a private concert at Neverland. As he moonwalked across the small stage, Elizabeth wept openly. No one has ever loved me more purely than Michael Jackson, she said that night. Michael responded, Elizabeth showed me that it's okay to be vulnerable. She taught me that real strength comes from letting people see your scars. Their final conversation took place weeks before Michael's death in June 2009. Elizabeth was recovering from heart surgery, and Michael called daily. Promise me something, Elizabeth, Michael said during their last call. Anything, my darling boy. Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll remember me not as the headlines, but as the person I was with you, as someone who tried to love purely. Michael, Elizabeth's voice broke, you are the purest soul I've ever known. Nothing will ever change that. When news of Michael's death reached Elizabeth, she was devastated. Her statement became legendary. I love Michael with all my soul, and I can't imagine life without him. We had such a deep connection. He was my precious love, part of my soul, and my heart is broken. At Michael's memorial service, Elizabeth was too grief-stricken to attend. Instead, she sent a letter that Paris read aloud. Michael was a personal love of mine, a treasured part of my world, part of the fabric of my life. He was a gift. His music was a gift bigger than any person could give. I loved him, and his music will live forever. Today there's a small plaque at Neverland, near where Michael and Elizabeth used to sit. It reads, Friendship isn't about who you've known the longest. It's about who walked into your life and said, I'm here for you, and proved it. The friendship between Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson teaches us that sometimes the most unlikely connections become the most meaningful. Two people from different eras, united by shared pain and the rare ability to see past fame to the human being underneath. Elizabeth found her truest friendship with a soft-spoken boy from Gary, Indiana, who just wanted someone to understand him. Michael found his sanctuary in the wisdom of a woman who had survived everything fame could throw at her. Their story reminds us that real love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone's flaws and choosing to love them anyway. It's about being there when the cameras stop rolling and the applause fades away. Elizabeth didn't just befriend Michael Jackson, she saved him. And in saving him, she showed the world what true loyalty looks like in an industry built on betrayal. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about romance. Sometimes they're about two damaged souls finding healing in each other's company. Sometimes they're about a Hollywood legend who saw past the king of pop facade to the frightened child underneath and said, I'm here. You're not alone anymore. That's not just friendship. That's love in its purest form. And that's the real magic of Michael Jackson and Elizabeth Taylor, a love story that transcended age, fame, and circumstance to become something eternal. As Elizabeth once said, the purest, most giving love I've ever known. In a world full of fake Hollywood relationships, theirs was beautifully, heartbreakingly real. If this incredible story of Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson's unbreakable friendship moved you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell for more amazing true stories about music's greatest legends. What do you think about their 27-year friendship? Have you ever had someone in your life who believed in you when everyone else walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story about true loyalty and unconditional support, share this video with them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if Elizabeth's courage to save Michael Jackson inspired you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore another untold story from the world of entertainment.